Okay, everybody, we're going to get started on this Q&A with Crushing Doubt to talk about mind-body symptoms as soon as I can get my Instagram ready. Just give me 1 second to get that up and running, and then we will dive right in. Okay, welcome to Crushing Doubt's Q&A every Thursday at 5, I almost said 6 p.m., but it's 5 p.m. Eastern now, 2 p.m. Pacific. Great to be here with you all. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. I am a former mind-body sufferer, or I suppose it's the human condition, and everybody has mind-body symptoms. Let's talk about what that is a little bit, and then we'll dive into how we're going to answer these questions, and I'll get right to it. Okay. So, first of all, I had 8 years of chronic everyday back pain. That's how I came into this work. I discovered the works of Dr. John Sarno, and it started me on a process of understanding that how we think about things and how we feel about things can really change what goes on in our bodies. And I found that that goes much deeper than I ever expected. And I was open to the idea, but it goes very far. And what I also found is that all of the science and logic fits with this as well. So we're going to talk, when I do answer these questions, in terms of my system that I used to get out of my symptom suffering. I did this with back pain. I did it with some other things too. I had a foot issue for a while, and I resolved it through these methods. I had a shoulder issue at one point. And it turns out that I'm able to resolve all of this. So the goal of my work is to make sure that you guys don't have to have any chronic symptoms, that you can get very good control over any acute symptoms as well, and use the symptoms to understand yourself better and have a better relationship with yourself. So it'll be those three things, and that fits with my column structure, which I'm going to talk about. The column system derives its name from when I was starting off working with other people after I had gotten better from the back pain. I would have people divide a sheet of paper into 3 columns to organize how to understand symptoms. So let me back up for 1 second and say one more thing before we dive into questions. Mind-body symptoms are anything that comes from your thinking or feeling experience that is not purely physical. If you're not sure whether you have mind-body symptoms, definitely important to visit a doctor to make sure. They're very good at ruling out life and death stuff. Everybody needs to get that checked out. But once you've gotten checked out, and usually people who come to see me have gotten checked out by multiple doctors, then you can really safely assume, okay, I need to change how I'm thinking about it. I need to uncover the emotions behind it, whatever it is. That's what my system does. So it is based on these 3 columns. They're called emotions, doubt, and power. The emotions column is for feeling states and recognizing them, getting that awareness to recognize what's happening with onsets and upticks in symptoms. The doubt column is for thinking. And if we stay in the same thinking, everything that goes on up here continues throughout the body. And if the body can already do it for physical reasons, it can do it for mind reasons. Lastly, power. By the way, that's for more seemingly chronic symptoms, the doubt column. The power column is for symptom plateaus and anything where you just feel like the symptoms are trying to tell you something, but you don't quite know what it is. So that is about changing your relationship with yourself. When I answer these questions, it's going to be addressing those 3 columns and helping people to determine what they need to do within those columns. So why don't we just dive in, guys? I've also decided I want to speed up this process because there's a lot of questions that come in, and we want to make sure that everybody gets their questions answered as needed. I do see some new people here. I wanted to say a quick hello to them. Cam Carmela, I haven't seen you here. Big Man Mike, I think you've been here once, but good to see you. Let's get your shift together. Thanks for joining us here, Adriana. Adriana Bucci has a great Instagram channel of her own, growing by leaps and bounds, but it's very helpful in dealing with narcissistic relationships. And she came on my podcast, and great to see you here. Okay, I do see lots of other people here that are usually here, so I'm saying hello to you all. Hello to the Crushing Doubt community. I'm going to dive in with questions. Please do let me know what's on your mind. The whole point of this is that questions are very key to getting you very clear on how you can get better, why you can get better. If you don't get clear on that, you stay in the same spot, and you can spiral in the symptoms and stay stuck in them. So we're going to change thinking here. All right. Russell Crane's Music. Thank you for joining us here, Russell. Russell says, hi, Dan and Crushing Doubt community. My partner and I have recently rescued a dog. The dog is super sweet and loving, but I have mixed feelings about keeping her while my partner is absolutely in love with her. At the same time, I'm dealing with allergies, which I've never had around dogs. And I've been around dogs a lot. Can I pretty much chalk this up to TMS? I have also felt very tired since we rescued her. Could this be a TMS equivalent? So let me first address what TMS is. TMS is tension myositis syndrome. That is what Dr. Sarno, the guy whose books really initially got me going towards a cure and helped me more than anything. Guy saved my life. He called mind body issues tension myositis syndrome. Now, originally that was for tension in the muscles. What he came to see is it's actually about the whole body and all kinds of things. So, Russell, short answer is absolutely yes. But let's look at why. All right. Now, first of all, anything that the body can do, the mind can use. So can it produce allergy-like symptoms? Absolutely. So that's already up for grabs as a potential question. But we have a solid piece of evidence for why it would be. You've been around dogs a lot and you've never had allergies before. Very, 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 very unlikely that out of nowhere you happen to develop allergies at a time where you're ambivalent about keeping these dogs. So the history all pointing in that direction. You've also felt very tired since you rescued her. That's another indication. It's not just allergies, it's also fatigue, apparently, right? Well, Russell, you're doing a great job of sniffing out the doubt. You're noting this doesn't seem to totally add up here. So, yes, I think you can chalk it up to a TMS equivalent, or a mind body equivalent. But I also want to say to everybody, allergies is something that I have listed in my book. I'll mention my book in a second. But allergies are an equivalent that I'm actually very accustomed to. So this is for Russell, but it's also for everybody. I want to encourage you. It's a very typical mind-body manifestation. Seasonal allergies, that's another one that I often think, hold on a sec. Seasonal allergies often behave in these ways that don't seem to make sense, or they're very haphazard. In my experience, symptoms are not haphazard. They're very easy to understand. I have a rule of thumb in my way of working, which is you make sense and your symptoms make sense. That is the baseline assumption that you're going to need to get the answers you need. Because if you believe that your symptoms might just be random or they might not make sense, you're not going to get very far in figuring them out. But the column structure provides you ways to figure these things out. You can look at, is it an onset or an uptick? Is it seemingly chronic? Is it a plateau? And that tells you, is it emotions column, doubt column, or power column? You can also figure out, is this coming from a thought that I'm having? Well, that points to the doubt column. Is it coming from the fact that I was feeling a certain thing? I mean, Russell, in this case, you are feeling something. You're saying, what did you say about it? You said you have mixed feelings about it. Okay, so let's look at those feelings, right? And the power column is the one that confuses people the most, but it is simply about your relationship with yourself. Are you feeling in a good spot with you? If you think about it that way, it's pretty easy to evaluate, are you feeling in power or not? And just by evaluating how the symptoms are playing out, what's the timing of the symptoms, you can figure out where am I in these columns, and then that tells you how to work in these columns. I've made it as simple as it can possibly be, even though sometimes people feel it can feel complicated at first. Uniformly, I find that after just a little bit of time, they figure out this isn't that hard to understand. This is actually pretty simple. I lay this all out in my book. I'll talk about that in a second. But bottom line, yes, Russell, that is mind body for sure. And I want you to push back on it. Okay? Susan Serino has a comment. I believe people with narcissistic parents are more prone to TMS or mind-body issues. Absolutely. There's certain populations that are more prone to mind-body symptoms, and people who have been through a lot of trauma, that's one. People who have been in very narcissistic relationships, especially with parents. Let's talk about why that is in a second, but I'm going to list a couple more of the types of people that are like that. But people who have narcissistic parents, they question their reality. They can get into a lot of doubt. And that's exactly what I'm here for, is to talk about doubt among the other columns. So another population that tends to get into this a lot are people pleasers, or what Dr. Sarno called goodists. And narcissistic parents often have kids who become goodists because they're trying to please somebody who's unpleasable, but they're trying. And all that effort can really lead to symptoms. Here's another group that often has mind body symptoms more than other groups: people who are very psychologically advanced. Now, this is surprising to some people because they're like, well, but I'm having a psychological issue. If I'm so advanced, why am I having this? I'll tell you why. Because mind body symptoms are what I believe this was a line from Dr. Howard Schubiner. He said that mind body symptoms are the last stop on the train. And what he meant by that, or what I mean by it and using it anyway, is that the mind body psychological defense is actually the most sophisticated defense that you can possibly have. So there's a lot of people who used to be using what I would call more primitive, I'll put in quotes, defenses like denial or repression or projection that require a lot of things from other people. But people who use a mind body defense, they don't want to burden other people. Instead, they burden themselves, and they burden themselves so much that they can't even know that that's what they're doing, or they'll stop doing it. So they bury it in their bodily experience. So yes, people with narcissistic parents, definitely more prone to this. Thanks for saying that, Susan. All right. Jumping over to Instagram, we've got some questions there. Jamie, good to see you here. Okay. Hi, Dan and Crushing Down community. Nice to see everyone again. I've been on vacation and noticed an increase in symptoms right away. I also had an episode of almost passing out. Fear has taken over. Any word of encouragement or advice? I feel like I'm not in a good place right now. Thanks, Dan. Okay, so Jamie, I'm sorry you're not in a good place right now, but one thing I want to encourage Jamie and everyone, I'm going to give specific encouragement to you, Jamie, but the overall encouragement I want to give you all is that one of the rules of thumb about working with mind-body issues is that we are moment-to-moment beings. What do I mean by that? What I mean is we're always changing. We're not the same person second to second. I'm not the same person I was 12 minutes ago when I started this show. I'm not even saying that as an exaggeration. Am I still basically the same person? Yeah. I've got all the same characteristics. I've got all the same experiences. I've got all the same tendencies. I've got all the same talents or potentially deficits. But what I'm not the same as is the same as I was that moment. In that moment, I was feeling what I was feeling then. In this moment, I'm feeling what I'm feeling now. In that moment, I was thinking what I was thinking then. In this moment, I'm thinking what I'm thinking now. Even my relationship with myself in the power column, that could easily change and does so in the course of these shows. When I have people on and I hear that something I said really helped them, my power might go way up. If somebody says, listen, I'm having a lot of doubt and I'm having a bad day myself, I might think, oh, maybe, I don't know, maybe these things don't work so well, which, by the way, that's just doubt. This does work well, but we're moment to moment beings. So Jamie, the fact that you are not in a good place right now doesn't mean that you can't be in a good space actually in a couple minutes when we talk about this. So let's talk about it. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean it's instantly going to happen, but I want you guys to remember you always have a chance to adjust things. Every second, every moment is a chance to adjust. All right. Now, let me talk a little bit about fear, Jamie, because that's a place that I want to start to encourage you or give you advice. So when I talk about the word doubt, sometimes people ask me, well, what do you mean? What is doubt? So doubt is anything where you're uncertain. That's the garden variety definition of doubt is uncertainty. But there are four main forms of doubt: fear, confusion, lack of certainty, and unanswered questions. And I list them in this order on purpose because I went from the strongest doubts to the least strong doubts. Fear is the strongest form of doubt. It's the one that takes over your mind the most. It's the one that makes it hard to feel like you can operate normally. Fear actually, and this is well known certainly in psychology, but I think even in studies that show that if you are highly anxious, your memory is going to be worse. Your processing speed is going to slow down. Your whole brain is being occupied. Think about like a computer when you have too many programs running, it starts to pinwheel. Well, that's what happens when you have so much fear, you can't think straight. So fear is the strongest form of doubt. I'm going to get to what to do about it in a second, Jamie. But I just want to note this for her and for everybody, that what you want to do is start to move from the strongest form of fear of doubt, which is fear, and start to move it through the spectrum towards what I call the positive side of doubt. Fear and confusion is the negative side of doubt. Those are the doubts that really don't help you. They make you feel worse, and they start to spiral in the negative direction. But once you've mastered fear enough in that moment and you're less confused than you were, then you get to what I call the positive side of doubt. And it's called the positive side of doubt because being in that space tends to move you in the positive direction. Why is that? Because when you aren't afraid, or at least not as afraid, when fear is down and you're not as confused, then you're in an active process of trying to get answers. And that's really what we're here to do. That's why I do this Q&A. And people have lots of different Q&As, but mine is a true Q&A where the questions and the answers are the key. It's not just of interest. They are the key to getting the solutions. So you've got to be in the right headspace to begin asking the questions and getting the answers. And Jamie, I just want to remind you, we've worked together before, and I've helped you bring down fear. And when that happens, you've made progress. And one of the reasons you've made progress is that you've gotten answers. I think what's happened is it's been a while since we've been interacting, and directly anyway. And you've also had a lot going on. I know I'll leave that to you to share with the community if you want. But as you're thinking about all these things, you can really get out of practice with keeping things kind of under control. And I just want to encourage you, don't buy whatever doubt's telling you in whatever form it's in. If it's fear, if it's confusion, if it's lack of certainty, even if it's unanswered questions, you need to believe that you can get answers. And so the key here is do not buy what the fear is telling you. You can even put it into words. Articulating a doubt is a really powerful thing to do. I have 3 tasks in the doubt column. There's not that much that needs to be done. It's observe, articulate, and counter. To observe a doubt is really to call it into question. Is this real? Instead of just buying it. Often people are just buying whatever doubt's saying to them. Articulating it is putting it into words. And then countering it is, once you put it into words, looking at it, is this actually true? And looking at the evidence, the science, the logic, your experience, inconsistencies with the presentation. As you do that, this is all going to get better. And I'll say one last encouraging thing for Jamie, but for everybody. Sometimes I get questions where people say to me, is it possible that doubt all by itself can control symptoms? That just if you're having high doubt, you could have high symptoms? And the answer to that is 100% yes, but it's especially yes with fear. When fear is very high, your symptoms get higher. And when fear gets low, your symptoms will often get a lot lower. So we just need to work at this. Jamie, I would encourage you, look for what are you specifically afraid of? Let's get it put into words. But we will master this, and you don't need to do it alone. In fact, I do want to say, there are various resources that I have that can help. They're all available on my website, www.crushingdoubt.com. My book is available on the website, though it will actually direct you to Amazon, which is the best place to get it because it can ship anywhere in the world. So look for my book on Amazon. It's the most comprehensive tool you can have, I think, in the mind-body field, because I even take the entire mind-body field and try to describe, why does this person say this and this person say this? I don't single out those people, but I just talk about the various things you'll hear about, and I integrate it all in one place. That's one resource. Another way that you can get help is to come see me in my groups. They're incredibly cost effective. I'm really proud of the way they're running as well. But it's just $100 a month to come see me for 3 meetings a week. And these meetings are 2 hours long. So you're getting 6 hours a week. And that's 24 hours a month for just $100. And in that time, it's sort of like this Q&A, but it's better in a lot of ways, because in that short period of time that I'm talking to you, first of all, there's a lot of back and forth. There's some different questions flying back and forth until we pinpoint, where do we need to talk? Where do you need the results? And it helps me tailor what I can say to you, right? So we get a lot farther in one sitting. In the meantime, as I often say, this is true for the Q&A as well. Don't just think about the times when I talk to you as the only time you're getting help. Try to think about it as when I was talking to Russell or Jamie, I was talking to you all. These are all pieces of wisdom and information that you can use in your own work with your own columns and figure out what's going on for you every single time. All right. So if you do come to my groups, I do encourage you either read the book or take my seminar, which is a video course, eight different sessions that teach you all about mind-body issues. That will set you up for the greatest success. But you can come see me every week. These are Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It's Mondays from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern, from Tuesdays 10 a.m. Eastern to 12 p.m. Eastern, and then Wednesdays I have evening hours in the East Coast. It is, or the Eastern time zone. I'm not on the East Coast. And that is from 5 to 7 p.m. I set it up that way so that people across the world could have access to me at a cheap cost as much as they need to, because it's hard to do this work alone. I can tell you from experience. I had that experience wishing that I had something more. In fact, most of the resources I've created are because of what I wished was there. All right. Knoxflam, I see your comment. That's so good for $100. Wow. Thank you. I'm really proud of it. It's something that really works for a lot of people. And I know it's not easy for people to afford things, especially when they're having symptoms. You know, a lot of people aren't even able to work as well until we get them going. So I needed something very cost effective. And I hope that you guys will take advantage of it and come see me. I'm very interested in helping as many people as possible for multiple reasons. I want to help people, but I also, every time we help somebody get better from this, they go and tell everybody about it. And the fact is, we need the whole world to know about these things. We need to change the whole conversation. So let's do it. Knox Flamma did actually also have one other comment. It's a quote from Dune, and I'm a sci-fi guy, so I like that. Let's see. He said, "I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration." I am going to copy this quote. Let's see. I'll look it up later, but I'm going to make this a podcast episode. Knox Flamma, that is fantastic. I remember that line, and it's exactly true. Fear will paralyze you, but not if we know what it is. Not if we don't have fear of fear. That disables it, and that can keep us moving along. Okay. Knox Fleming then said, one of the people who had to quit a dream job and give up my apartment. Oh, I see. Raising your hand. I'm one of the people who had to quit a dream job and give up my apartment because of the severity of symptoms. And then he said, it's such a good long quote. I'm getting it tattooed. Nice. Great quote. I do see some new people on here, and I just wanted to say hi to them because I haven't seen them yet. So, wow, that's a mouthful. Bicycrin, I think. Good to see you here. And Sarah Jones, thank you for joining us here as well. If I didn't say your name, it's because I've actually recognized your name before, so you're more familiar to me. All right. Susan Sereno had another comment. She said, traditional doctors and physical therapists cause a lot of doubt when they aren't aware of mind-body issues, and they say things like the pain or symptoms might be the cause. I think she's saying that different structural issues might be the cause of the pain and the symptoms. That might is a very powerful word. And that's Susan's point. And I want to talk a little bit about that. So, when you go to see a doctor, or really when you're just walking around there in society, most people, the vast majority of all people, know nothing about mind-body issues. They might say, okay, yeah, I get that ulcers can come from stress, or tension headaches can come from tension. There might be some very cursory understanding of it, but almost no one in your life is going to know about it. When I was getting better and I read Dr. Sarno, I couldn't believe it, but nobody knew who Dr. Sarno was. Very few people. Although he had helped Howard Stern get better, and Howard Stern talks about him a lot. He helped Larry David get better. But I didn't know these things, and no one in my life knew these things. So you need to know when you're trying to get better from these things, you're in a tricky spot, the same spot I was in, which is you actually know better than all of them. And yet you're vulnerable to all of these things that they might do or say. And Susan's point, I think, is that with doctors and physical therapists, they're in an even better position potentially to help. But instead, when they say misinformed things, that's even worse than your average person on the street. And it can send people down a very difficult path. In fact, when people join my groups, I should say this is another added benefit. I have a community website. It's just interior to the group members, and they can ask me written questions throughout the week. So it's not just those groups. And somebody asked a question there, and they were saying, I had a functional doctor basically give a diagnosis that I knew wasn't right, and yet it still sticks in my head. That's a key point right there. Let's think about that. This means, and this is how doubt works, by the way, it doesn't even matter if we know it's not true. What matters most is that we absolutely know with certainty that it's not true. A little worry, it can just get you going. And so if somebody says, oh, it might be this, or if somebody says, I think it's this, or if somebody gives a diagnosis that doesn't make sense, but they said it, if you aren't very bolstered in your doubt column, you can be extremely vulnerable to that. Another great example of that I think I've mentioned to you, Susan, but I've mentioned to many people, is many, many times you'll hear doctors say, or other people say, oh, I'm 99% sure that this is nothing. Now, 99% is actually a really great number normally, but it's not a great number when it comes to doubt. Why? Because that 1% is extremely powerful. That 1% is where doubt lives. And when people say 99%, they're giving doubt all the room it needs to play. So one of the things that you'll find is an advantage in working with me, whether it's at the Q&A or coming to my groups or reading my book or taking my seminars, whatever it is, I don't do 99%. I look for ways to be 100% sure, 100%. And that shuts down doubt's chances of infiltrating. Okay. Myra said, spot on, Dan. I appreciate that, Myra. And Myra actually took my seminar, did very well with it. And so you've had some great success, and now we're working on some other stuff. Mind-body issues, it's the human condition. We're all going to have, I'm going to have mind-body issues in the future that I don't know about yet. And these columns are going to tell me how I'm going to deal with it. So it's a way of getting a system down that's really going to help in the long run. In any case, Susan, I really wanted to thank you for bringing up that that vulnerability that we all have as mind-body human beings, that if somebody says something, we're off and running. When people say, oh, it's cold and flu season, listen, I know that there is something to that you got to be watching out for, but it actually is a very unhelpful statement in a sort of way, because it gets us all thinking about it. I even somewhat regret having even just mentioned it here, because it's the power of suggestion. But I'm trying to give you the opposite. I'm trying to say, don't listen to those words. Keep listening to your mind. That as long as you stay in a good space with yourself, you're going to be safe from a lot of things. Debbie A says, hey from the UK, loving the CD community, Crushing Out community. Debbie, thank you so much. And you're up late. I'm a night owl, so that's not that late for me, but you're all the way in England, so it's already 11:30 there. And I think it's 11:30. Maybe it's 10:30. I always forget where we are in the time zones, or maybe the time of year. But thank you for joining us here. Glad you're enjoying the community. You're making great progress, and you keep it up. I love working with you on it. Okay, Maria Llewellyn, thank you for your patience here. UTI symptoms showed up. Urinary tract infection. One of my symptom imperatives. I'm going on a road trip. I hope it will go away and not spoil my trip. What should I say to my frustration and fear? So I'm going to get to what to say to it in a second, but I want to comment on the fact that a lot of times when people are resistant to the idea of mind-body experience, or the ideas of that we kind of talk about in my line of work, they'll say, well, a urinary tract infection is not mind-body, it's an infection. And I want to encourage you, listen, infections usually will need to be treated medically, but many infections start as mind-body components, as mind-body distress, or a big emotional flare, or doubt. I've seen people who have repeated infections because they really think something's wrong with them medically. Now, again, medical things need to be treated medically. And a urinary tract infection, I would encourage you treat that medically in terms of once it's started. But proactively, Maria, I think we could I know we could get this much more under control. So that goes right into what should I say to my frustration and fear? There's a couple parts to this. One is I want you to rely on the fact that progress can be made. That because this is mind body driven, then that means we can make progress. We can get to a place where you have these symptoms less, where you can control them better. And part of the nuts and bolts of that, I would guess, are going to be to look in these columns and see how's it operating? What kind of doubts are you having? What kind of emotional flare-ups are happening that maybe you weren't so aware of? The emotions column organizes a kind of shortcut method to figure out what's happening with you emotionally at any given time based on how the symptoms are behaving. So one of the things I'm telling you that should help with the frustration and fear is there's a lot of tools I can bring to your disposal. And the book, my membership, the seminar, all of it, and this Q&A, they're all designed to just get you answers. So you're not alone. So one thing to say to your frustration and fear is, I'm not alone. I'm going to get answers. I want you guys to think about what I just did at base. If that worked successfully, what it would have done is to move Maria out of fear and confusion, the negative side of doubt, and into lack of certainty and unanswered questions, the positive side of doubt, where now we're a detective. We are looking for, what's the cause here? What's the root, and how can we get this cured or cleared up fast? We've moved into detective mode. Fear and confusion, that's not detective mode. That's like, fugitive mode. We're running or hiding. And so that's one thing to say to it. Here's another thing that you can say to the frustration and fear that I find helpful. When you're having a lot of physical symptoms and you feel afraid of them, I find that it's very helpful to remember that they are a physical manifestation of what you're feeling emotionally. So whatever's going on there, there's upset, like, emotional upset behind it. And you're going to be a lot less frustrated and afraid if you realize the entire mind body process is trying to help you to understand yourself more. So you're not stuck in this. You're not stuck in anything with mind body experience. If you can bring down doubt, you're not stuck in anything. So tell yourself that as well, or tell your frustration and fear that. Maria, I gave you a lot to go on there, hopefully. Please do let me know if you need follow-up with that, or you have other questions. And that's something I'll say to you all, not just in this Q&A, but in general. When you ask a question or you're not certain about something and you need some information and you go ahead and try to find it out, if you don't get the answers you need, keep asking the questions. I always say these questions have to be answered to your satisfaction, which doesn't mean they always will be. It's always my intent. But if they aren't, it usually just means there's another question behind it. So let's keep with the follow-up. Again, that's another advantage of groups. The follow-up would happen right there. And I find people tend to get really sometimes breathtaking answers. I'm not saying that to brag about the answers, but I mean the depth that we can get to through these understandings. It's really fun to see. Also, by the way, in the groups, we share wins with each other, and it's really encouraging. And it's just a great and supportive environment. Okay, Maria, do some follow-up as needed, okay? Okay, Karen Isaacs. Oh, hold on one second. I had an ad block pop up there. No, thank you, ad block. Appreciate your help. See what I just did with ad block? That's what you do with doubt. No, thank you. I don't need that. Okay, Karen Isaac says, someone told me I had rage. This hurt me. Came from a woman who is totally cut off. I felt shame. All right, I'm going to make a little recommendation there, Karen, which may be something you already did, but let me put it out there anyway. One thing I really want to encourage you all is, when you feel very vulnerable to other people, you need to remember to put a very strong filter on who you will listen to. I like to say shrink the circle of trust. And that way, you have to earn the trust. You have to earn the spot where I'm really going to listen to what you have to say, because that protects me. And that not only protects me, it keeps me in a place where I'm listening to people who are genuinely helpful. And I can kind of filter out so many other people. Now, one way to do that is to recognize why someone is not fit to make a comment. And you actually just did that. This is a woman who's totally cut off. And now she's saying you have rage. I want to encourage you about this, Karen. This is true. This will help everybody, hopefully. But many people will dump a comment in your lap that is actually trying to resolve some kind of problem that they have. In this case, I'm guessing that this woman has far more rage than you do. First of all. Secondly, who the fuck doesn't have rage? Pardon my French. We all have rage. And thirdly, I know your story, have tons of reasons to have rage. In the power column, be good to yourself. Don't apologize for who you are. Don't apologize for how you feel. Don't apologize for anything about you. I mean, sure, if you do something wrong to somebody, you can apologize about that. But don't apologize for who you are. Shame is really a feeling of, I shouldn't be me. Being me is wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. Okay? I probably shouldn't have sworn, but that's okay. I will get in my power column and say, it's all right. And I actually am betting, Karen, you liked it. So we'll see. Let me know what's on your mind. Let's do follow-up as needed. All right? Susan says, Dan, you know all the doubt you helped me crush because of things doctors and physical therapists said to me. Absolutely. So I'm going to say something, a comment that from this comment that I think will help a lot of people. The columns have a flow to them in terms of how you work on things. It's bring down doubt, learn about emotions, and flow into power. And I say this a lot in group, but I'll say it, I'm just going to say it regularly, including here at the Q&A. The reason that's the case is when doubt is high, you can't see the other columns. They're completely obscured, especially if it's fear and confusion. You can't see anything. You don't even know which direction you're going in. So bringing down doubt is always the first step. But once doubt is down, that is where you can start to learn about those onsets and upticks of symptoms and start to learn that the symptoms are actually giving you good information. Doubt symptoms aren't giving you good information, except the fact that you're having doubt. And we need to look at that. Once doubt's down, then you can start getting good information. And that can take hold in what I call the emotional columns. The emotions column, of course, is an emotional column, but so is the power column. The emotions column is where you get awareness of emotions. And the power column is where you figure out what to do with those. So bringing down the doubt is what we worked on with Susan for a while. And now she's in a place where she's learning so many things that she couldn't before because she kept getting sucked into doubt. And it must have been very frustrating at times, Susan, I know, but I've seen this again and again. So I'm very patient about this myself. But it's hard when you're the sufferer and you don't want to be having it. And these doctors and physical therapists are saying all of these things to you. And that's where you need somebody who has a lot of certainty and the right credentials to tell you about that certainty. And I would like to think I'm that person that can do that. Some of it is I took what Dr. Sarno wrote and I understood that Dr. Sarno wasn't just saying helpful things. The way that he was helpful. And so I've taken the way that he was and put it into practice in the way that I work and tried to expand it with my information on the columns. All right. Nox Flamma has a comment on Instagram or a question. If you have a sec, can you also talk about the lack of chronic pain education doctors receive while in medical school compared to acute pain? For example, I find that's quite relevant. That is extremely, extremely relevant. What I would say is, we've been talking about society and how they don't know a lot of things that they need to know and how they're not knowing it can lead to lots of problems. Well, this is a great example of it. One of the things that we are working on in the mind-body community is getting medical schools to start paying attention to their own journals in these regards. They pay attention to their journals, I'm sure, in lots of ways, but somehow they're missing this part where the journals are telling them, hey, structural issues aren't the main cause of pain. It's mind-body pain. And that's just pain, but other symptoms as well. And so doctors aren't learning about mind-body experience, but to Knox Flamma's point, they specifically aren't learning about chronic pain. Typically in medical school, they're taught that chronic pain is something we don't understand a lot about. There's not much we can do about it. And the best you can do is get into a decent enough headspace to deal with it. Well, I don't know about you, but that sounds like crap to me. And not only that, it's not necessary. And I know from experience, I got out of it. So yes, typically doctors are only taught about acute pain. Not only that, they're not even taught well about acute pain. Where they are taught well is acute pain from medical conditions, from really bad medical conditions. They're taught well about that because they need to know how to respond to emergencies, like chest pain from a heart attack. But they don't know how to deal with chest pain from a panic attack. Not very well. And they need to be able to tell the difference between those in terms of acute pain and certainly in terms of chronic pain. They're not getting the training they need. So I will just add that if we can, this is why I want to convert as many people as possible to believing and understanding the science and logic behind this, because eventually it's the societal viewpoint where we all are on the same page that is really going to get these medical schools and medical communities to change what they do, because it's in their best interest. It reduces cost. It helps more people. These people genuinely want to help people, at least most of them. So why not? We just have to get their ear, and we have to get it clear that this is working for lots and lots of people. And a lot of people are talking about it. Just recently, Kim Kardashian, I believe, is reading Dr. Sarno's book. That's good for everybody. We need people who are pretty well known to start talking about this more, because it's either that or we've got to have the groundswell of everybody getting cured and talking to other people. I'm banking on the latter, not on the Kim Kardashians of the world, because you can't depend on that. But the main idea is let's get as many people as possible to understand and know about these things. Okay, Carrie Tischler says, I like that swearing. It's appropriate in this case. And if it's not, who the fuck cares? Okay, love it, Carrie. And I'm the same way. I just don't mean to offend anybody if it bothers anybody. But I'm saying the reason I said it really was to be in Karen's corner. And I try to encourage people to be in their own corner. So there you go. Now, Knox Flamma said Boulder back pain study as published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, Psychiatry Medical Journal. This is a study that showed that back pain is by far best resolved with mind-body treatments. Much better than even cognitive behavioral therapy, but significantly better than any kind of physical intervention. It's a landmark study, really amazing work. Okay. Luann Davison says, okay, I agree with your comment, but the reality is medicine and the American model is all about profits. Okay, now that is a major thing standing in the way, Luann. I do agree with that. But I will tell you, if you wanna influence organizations like that, you can actually change the profits. You can make it profitable to do it this way, and you can also make it unprofitable when you show people how this works in ways that they're not seeing. Because guess what? If they're doing the wrong thing, they become very unpopular, and that is not good for profits. So some people say that I'm a kind of a perpetual optimist, but here again, I am an optimist. I think we can get this done. We've got to know how to interface with people and influence them genuinely. Okay, but thanks for your comment. I do agree. Profits is key, but let's work on it. If the government sees, let's say, that the work we're doing in the mind-body field is returning a lot of people to the workforce, they're going to start to invest in it. There are all kinds of ways to think about this, but I totally agree with your point, and yet I'm optimistic. Okay, Beatrice, good to see you here. My mind-body symptoms make my current life miserable and previous life seem like a dream facade, but I was successful in career, and my current symptoms, and I still, hold on. Okay, I was a little choppy in terms of what was here. I hope I got the right idea. Let me see if I missed anything. Okay, I wake up every day with my symptoms and still cannot believe where my life has taken me in the last soon-to-be 2 years. I still wake up in disbelief about where my life has gone, and level 3 doubt is the strongest factor. Let's talk about the levels of doubt. Level 1 doubt is it mind, body, or not? And being clear on that. Level 2 doubt is, I know it's mind, body, but my mind, body symptom, maybe it's worse than others. That's not the case, but a lot of times people have that worry. And level 3 doubt is, I know it's mind, body. I know it's not worse than other mind, body symptoms, but is there something wrong with me? Am I going to be able to do this? So level 3 doubt is the strongest factor. Well, that's great that you've identified it, Beatrice, because that's now we can work where we can work. But then she says, still don't understand why I felt I had to lose. I still don't really understand why a job I truly was passionate about, why you had to lose that. It had to be one of the things I lost in the process of whatever this time has to teach me. So, Beatrice, I think that, there's a lot of loss that can happen with these symptoms, but I actually think in some ways that's the point. It doesn't have to happen that way. And if we educate all of society in this, we can turn this around. But to your point, a lot of times we have trouble recognizing our own suffering until we see it clearly enough. And sometimes we can't see it until we do lose things. I'm not saying that's good. I would rather it not go that way. But a lot of times we cannot see how much we're suffering until it really, really blows up. And the good news is we're going to be able to cure these symptoms, and then you'll be able to get back to work. You won't necessarily have lost so much. And that's what we're aiming for. Now, I do also want to make one comment on something that Beatrice said, just in case it jumped out at people. She said it's been going on for 2 years. People can have these things for a long time when they're not working on mind-body things. That's pretty routine. But some people have it for a long time, even when they are working on mind-body symptoms. And usually that's because of something that I call a neuroplastic feedback loop. The most people who have mind-body symptoms don't have this. My back pain was not this, but I did have a foot issue that was this. So I know the difference between the two. And when you have a neuroplastic feedback loop, it comes from a very bad emotional experience coupled with a very scary physical event or experience, and then leads to very obsessional thinking. Those three things are the kind of triad of where your brain goes in a neuroplastic feedback loop. And essentially what it is your entire central nervous system is on high alert, and it starts to collect symptoms like a magnet. But that can all be reversed with the exact same treatment. It's bring down doubt, learn about the emotions, flow into power. You can get there no matter what. It takes longer with a neuroplastic feedback loop. And if you are wondering, do I have that or not? Most people don't, but bring it to me. I can tell you whether you do or not. I'll listen to your story and I'll tell you. Okay. But don't let that get you worried, because every mind-body symptom can be reduced and ultimately cured. Okay. Russell says, thanks, Dan, for the amazing response. It makes sense that all of these equivalents are mind-body. Glad that helped, Russell. Keep me posted if you need anything else. I appreciate you. Okay, Luann Davison says, agree about my optimism. So excellent. You make a great point, and we agree, and we're going to work at it, and we're going to work at it together. And this is one of the reasons I do what I do. When I learned that I could get better through Dr. Sarno, I thought, my God, if only people had known, I wouldn't have been in this. So I got to help people. And so we're doing this together. This is part of the community, not just the Crushing Doubt community, but the mind-body community in general. We are working to get more and more people relief so that the opinions and ideas change. Okay, couple last questions before we wrap up for today. Naxlama said, get their ear and get Big Pharma and their evil drug reps out of the decision room. Absolutely. P.S. Thank you, Kim Kardashian. Didn't think I'd ever say that. Yes. We do need to get these big monolithic organizations and fields and companies out of our decision process. I often said to people, about insurance. People would say, why don't you take insurance? And I'm like, why would I take insurance? I understand that people, might need help affording it, but I'd rather just lower my fees than deal with an insurance company, because now I've got somebody who doesn't have my training telling me what I'm supposed to be doing. Makes no sense at all. We need to make sure that money isn't ruling things, but we also need to acknowledge it does push a lot of things. So let's use it to go in the direction we need to. Okay. Carrie Tischler then said, I was at a level 3 for a long time as well, when I learned that not all thoughts are true. That changed everything. That is brilliant right there. Think about that. Not all thoughts are true. In fact, many of them are not. Some might even say most of them are not. When it comes to doubts, you're going to find people have thousands of doubts a day, and they're all false. One thing I say about doubt is it's like a pathological liar. We need to learn to not trust anything that it has to say. Thank you for saying that, Carrie. Okay, Dorisa says, I think I had a neuroplastic loop. That could be. We can talk about it. But here's the thing. Even for those who did have it or do have it, there comes a point where it crosses over, where you bring down doubt for long enough. It doesn't have to be all the way down, but my rule of thumb with a neuroplastic feedback loop is spend the most time possible with doubt as low as you can get it. You do that for long enough and you start to get out of it. And then what starts to happen is it starts to behave a lot more like other mind-body symptoms. You can start to see emotions column onsets and upticks. You can start to see how it relates to power. You can start to see how doubt in one moment changes it. A true neuroplastic feedback loop, the symptom doesn't change a lot at first. One way I like to think about it is it's like a giant bell that got rung. That thing keeps vibrating for a while, but then it'll eventually calm down. So that's a helpful, Beatrice, you have one of those. Think about it as that giant bell. It's going to eventually stop reverberating. I know the bell keeps getting hit, and that's why it reverberates more, but it doesn't get hit as strongly. And eventually it just calms down. Luann says, is there a way to watch the prior live session question and answer sessions? I can't seem to locate them. Yes. If you're watching on YouTube, I have a playlist. There's a playlist for all kinds of different things. The doubt column, the emotions column, the power column. There's interviews that I did. There's these sessions that I did, live sessions with people. But one of the playlists is the Q&A playlist. And so you can find them all on YouTube. On Instagram, you can also find them. And go to my Instagram page, and many of the links are me. You'll see me looking just like this. That's a signal that that's a Q&A. So go back and watch them either way. Let me know if that helps. Okay, Patty Flowers, good to see you here. I have that loop too. Well, it can be broken. And there's just a particular way to work on it. I'd love to work with you on it. Again, come to my website, www.crushingdoubt.com, if you want to check out any of these resources. And you can also email me, dan@crushingdoubt.com, if you want to find out more, or you want to find out, do I have a neuroplastic feedback loop? But no matter what, you guys can get better. And the groups are fantastic for it, and I'm right there with you on it. If you do come to the groups, I do highly encourage, get the book or take the seminars before. It really helps you understand the column system and how to work with it. Okay, Beatrice says, neuroplastic feedback loop doesn't allow energy to move. So I hear what you're saying, Beatrice, though I would say that's a form of doubt. What happens with a neuroplastic feedback loop is you do not tend to see a lot of results in the first couple months of doing the work, and sometimes for even longer. But the cognitive work, I know what cognitive work is required to get where you need to go. Okay. Teresa says, I think I'm on the road. Yep, I think you are. And so that ringing bell is starting to calm down, and you're getting into the place where it's more like regular mind-body symptoms, which still can be difficult to certainly to have, but they're easier to get past. And so we always want to move towards that. Okay. Thanks for the hearts, Luann. All right. Last question here is from Catherine Toomer. Good to see you, Catherine. Hi, Dr. Dan. Do you have any experience with someone who has many physiologic, likely mind-body symptoms, but also delusions and paranoia, and find that it is all mind-body? I have a friend with such symptoms. That's really interesting. I certainly do have some experience talking to people with that. I haven't treated a lot of people in that exact experience. I have had some treatment experience with it. But what I'll say is, uh, it's an interesting question because it can go either way in that case. I mean, delusions and paranoia are they're very big emotional and psychological experiences, and they can happen for like big psychological, almost like those big time diagnoses like being psychotic, things like that. And so you do have to watch out for that. I don't want to label everything mind body, either in the medical side or the psychological side. So in that case, I'd want somebody in the psychological field to evaluate, is that a symptom of the mind body work, of the mind body experience, which it can be, or is there something bigger going on here? And there are ways to tease that out, like family histories of those things, which, by the way, could still just be mind body issues in lineal form. But when they're very high level symptoms that are dangerous in some way, whether medical or psychological, that's where I get it checked out by a doctor first. Or in this case, it doesn't have to be a doctor of psychology, but somebody who's very well trained in psychology. So I'm not saying it isn't mind body, but this is one of those cases, the rare cases that are a psychological experience where I want to get it teased out. Is there a bigger process going on here on top of the mind body experience? But people like that have mind body symptoms. And sometimes delusions and paranoia can relate to the mind body experience. One interesting thing, I'll end on this note, is a lot of times I'll treat mind body conditions and it will end up essentially curing people of underlying things that didn't seem related to the mind body experience. An eating disorder is a great example of that. I've treated people with eating disorders and I've just done the mind body work because I'm not an eating disorders expert, and they've ended up getting better from the eating disorder because the columns and the mind body work reorganized what was going on inside of them to such a degree that the other things could get alleviated. The delusions and paranoia might have the same thing. But first, let's get it checked out and make sure there isn't some bigger process going on. Catherine said he has been through lots of trauma, and then she says, yes, that helps. Okay, excellent. Guys, great questions as always. Questions are the key to getting better. Of course, you do need the answers, but that's why you come here. And if you want my help and input on a more regular basis, come visit me in the groups. Again, it's on www.crushingdoubt.com. It's just $100 a month for 6 hours of meeting a week, 24 hours a month, where you get to come and hear my expertise. You get to hear from other people. You get to get encouraged about how they're getting better. And I look forward to seeing many of you there, many of you here. But whatever it is, make sure you're getting the answers that you need, and keep the questions coming. That's what you need to do. Okay, thank you guys. Good seeing you all.